In this video, I'm going to talk about voting and how voting takes place. This is going to be an introduction to this topic because we're going to talk about voting a little bit more. But I want you to understand some basic things because it's going to help understand how some of the rules of procedure at Model United Nations conferences. So when we think about voting at Model United Nations conferences, we have to make a distinction between procedural votes and then substantive votes. So I want to talk about procedural votes first. Procedural votes deal with the process by which the committee makes decisions. Like it's what's going to happen in committee. And some of the rules of procedure are always enforced by the chair. Like sometimes they use their discretion, but all committees begin with the same way, with roll call vote. Okay, some of the rules of procedure are determined by the committee themselves. The committee gets to decide when they're going to begin debate. The committee gets to decide when debate is going to end. The committee gets to decide what topic they're going to talk about first, how long delegates are allowed to speak during certain times. The committee decides that by way of voting. These are all procedural votes. They have to do with how the committee is going to function. They don't deal with the topic at hand. A substantive vote, on the other hand, deals with the actual topic under consideration, the topics that are identified in the background guide. So, for example, depending on what the topic is, if there's a discussion over how to fund a proposed agency, if somebody's solution to a problem is to create a new agency, and there's a discussion over how to fund it, that's a substantive debate. If you're in a committee that is trying to decide whether or not the Security Council should approve a peacekeeping mission, that's a substantive debate. If you're in a committee talking about climate change and how to address it, that's a substantive debate. So procedural, how the committee is going to run. Substantive, the topic itself. So all committee meetings start with roll call vote. Right? And the reason that the chair takes the roll call is because, one, it allows the chair to determine who is and isn't present in the committee, right? So in many ways, it's like taking attendance in a classroom. And what this allows the chair to do is to calculate how many people are in the committee, because some votes require a simple majority, some votes require a 2/3 majority. And so when the chair knows who's in the committee, how many people are in the committee, they can determine what's a simple majority, what's a 2/3 vote. But during roll call, something else very important happens. Delegates have to declare their voting status. Now, what do I mean by voting status? Well, this is why I talked about procedural versus substantive debates. All delegates have to vote on procedural matters. Nobody can abstain. You can't not vote. You're either going to vote yes or you're going to vote no. And the thing is, when the chair takes roll call, they're going to count up how many delegates are in the committee. And then if there's a procedural vote, they're going to count the yes votes, they're going to count the no votes. And if it doesn't equal the total number of delegates who are in the committee, they're going to say, I'm sorry, delegates, we're going to have to do this again. Apparently, some delegate didn't vote, and they're going to hold the vote again. You cannot abstain on a procedural vote for everybody. On substantive votes, though, voting status is very important. There's two things that somebody can say when the chair is asking, like in this video, we're assuming you're Cameroon, right? When the chair calls Cameroon, a delegate can say present, right? When you say present, what that means is you retain the option to abstain if you want on substantive votes. Maybe you're going to abstain, maybe you aren't going to abstain, but you still have that option. Some delegates will respond during roll call by saying present and voting. When this happens, the delegate basically gives up the right to abstain on substantive votes. They can no longer, for the duration of... Whoa! What happened there?
Gimbal just freaked out.
Whoa. Has it been filming the whole time?
Yeah.
Really? Let's come back.
We're back.
Okay, so I have no idea what the just happened there. The camera is on something called a gimbal, and it sort of keeps everything steady. But whatever just happened there, I think, oh, I know. The gimbal apparently has epilepsy, as do I, and it just you just experienced a grand mal seizure. Sorry, I'm allowed to make jokes. Let's go back to where we were. I have no idea what the hell just happened. So on substantive votes, right, if the chair says Cameroon and you say present, you still retain the right to abstain if you want to later on in the conference. But if you respond by saying present and voting, you give up the right to abstain. Now, from my perspective, I don't see any reason why you should, ahead of time, give up the right to abstain. If you don't want to abstain, abstain. You don't have to vote, but why give up that right? Right? It makes no sense. I don't know why any delegate ever says present and voting, except that it kind of sounds cool, like, I don't know, official. COC, MUN delegates always respond present. If you're in a simulation, or God forbid, in a conference, and you respond with present and voting, hope that I'm not in the room, because that's not going to go well. You're always going to respond by present, not present and voting. Did I say that wrong? Okay, I didn't say that wrong. When you vote, unlike a regular class, you don't, like if somebody says, are you here, and you raise your hand, we use placards. A placard is just a piece of paper with the name of your country on it. For example, Cameroon. We're Cameroon. In this video, for our purposes, we're Cameroon. Here's something important to keep in mind. When you're using your placard during voting, right, the chair will say, all those in favor. You're going to hold your placard very high. I can't hold it very high. We'll see what happens. The producer's moving the camera back. When you vote on an issue in committee, what you want to do is you want to stick your placard up high and make it easy for the chair to count. Because then the chair is going to start counting, right? And the co-chair is going to count as well. And then at the end, they're going to confer and see if they have the right number, right? So whether they're voting yes or whether they're voting no, where you're voting no, you just raise your placard vertically. Now, there are other times when you want to be recognized by the chair to speak. In a case like that, you don't want to hold it like this because that's hard to read. When the chair is looking to people to recognize, to speak or make motions, hold it like that. But again, depending on where you're sitting, you may want to hold it a little bit higher in the air so that the chair can see it, right? So you're going to hold it up in the air like that. And by the way, that's a really good reason for not sitting like right in the middle of a whole group of people, because if everybody's raising their placards, your placard will be like blocked out. So it's good to like sit on an aisle where you can hold your placard over to the side or to the other side like that. You want to avoid sitting right in the front row because even though the chairs can easily see your placard, they don't like getting accused of calling people in the front row. So sometimes they neglect to call people in the front row or don't call them as often as they should. Lastly, the placard can also be useful for advertising, right? And so what do I mean by that? You're going to be going up and you're going to give speeches in front of the committee. But at the beginning of the committee, nobody knows what country you represent. So oftentimes what delegates will do is if they're going up and they're giving a speech, they'll write down on a piece of paper some notes. Imagine the notes are on here, just bullet points about what they want to say. And when they walk up to the front of the committee, they'll hold their placard up and they'll say, "Thank you, Honorable Chair and fellow delegates," and then they'll give their speech, holding their placard up the whole time so that people remember, oh, that was Cameroon. There are so many delegates coming to speak sometimes that it's hard to remember who everybody is. And so holding your placard like this at the very beginning for the first speeches and as people become more acquainted with you is a good way to advertise who you are and get people to remember the name of your country.